On March 8th, a fireball lit up the skies over Europe, brighter than Venus, moving at 47,000 kilometers per hour. It broke apart over Bavaria and sent meteorites raining down across Germany, Austria, and the Czech Republic. One fragment punched through a farmhouse roof. The family was home, nobody was hurt, and the timing was impossible to ignore, because while every telescope in Europe was tracking that debris field, 3i Atlas made its move, and almost nobody was watching. On March 3rd, Dr. Avi Loeb published a comprehensive reanalysis of 3i Atlas's trajectory data. The conclusion is unambiguous. NASA's math was wrong. For 8 weeks, the official JPL report claimed the object was experiencing natural outgassing, drifting away from the Sun like every other comet in history. But the corrected numbers tell a different story. The object is not drifting, it is manoeuvring. We are now 7 days from March 16th. 7 days until this object reaches Jupiter's magnetosphere, and if you watched my last investigation, you know exactly what that means. But 4 things just happened in the last week that NASA and the ESA are being very, very quiet about. First, the German fireball hit on March 8th, the exact day NASA was scheduled to release updated trajectory data for 3i Atlas. The data was delayed by 36 hours. Second, when the data finally dropped, it contained a bombshell buried in the technical appendix. NASA's original calculation of the non-gravitational acceleration was off by a factor of 5. The object is thrusting sideways, not just away from the Sun. Third, a report surfaced claiming US intelligence agencies have been tracking 3i Atlas since December 2025, months before it made headlines, and are now actively denying involvement. Fourth, a group of scientists just published an emergency proposal to send an interceptor spacecraft to chase this object out of the solar system, not to observe it, to catch it. But the launch window closed 4 days ago. If you are new here, you have arrived at exactly the right moment. The story is accelerating. Make sure you are subscribed, because on March 16th, we're going to see if this object does what every piece of new evidence now suggests it was sent here to do. Upload and leave. Let's start with what fell from the sky. At 21:47 Central European Time on March 8th, 2026, hundreds of eyewitnesses across Germany, Austria and the Czech Republic reported a brilliant fireball tearing through the night sky. Dashcam footage captured the moment. A streak of white light, brighter than Venus, moving west to east at hypersonic speed, then a flash, then darkness. 3 minutes later, a 4.2 kilogram meteorite punched through the clay tile roof of a farmhouse outside Munich, crashed through the attic and embedded itself in the second-floor hallway. The family was home. Nobody was hurt. The rock was still warm when they picked it up. The European Space Agency issued a preliminary statement within 6 hours. Routine meteorite fall. Likely origin the asteroid belt. Spectral analysis pending. Nothing unusual. Move along. But here is what the ESA did not mention in their press release. The timing. For the last 3 months, 3i Atlas has been the most observed object in the solar system. Hubble has been tracking it. JUICE captured it. Ground-based observatories from Chile to Hawaii have been imaging it nightly. Amateur astronomers with backyard telescopes have been uploading data to forums in real time. The object has been under near-constant surveillance. But on the night of March 8th, for a 6-hour window between 1900 and 100 UTC, almost every major telescope in Europe was retasked. They were tracking the fireball's debris field, calculating its entry trajectory, searching for additional fragments. Standard protocol. Perfectly reasonable. Except that 6-hour window was the exact moment 3i Atlas crossed a critical threshold in its approach to Jupiter. It entered the sphere of influence where Jupiter's gravitational field becomes stronger than the Sun's. From that point forward, the object is no longer orbiting the Sun. It is orbiting Jupiter. And during that 6-hour gap, something changed. The astrometry data from the Minor Planet Center, published on March 9th this morning, shows a new trajectory adjustment. Small, precise. The object altered its velocity by 0.8 meters per second. In spacecraft terms, that is a tiny correction burn. In comet terms, it is impossible. Comets do not make precision adjustments when entering a planet's gravitational sphere of influence. They drift. They tumble. They follow ballistic arcs determined by gravity and momentum. They do not fire thrusters at the exact moment every telescope in Europe is pointed at a fireball 8,000 kilometers away. So, let's ask the question nobody in the mainstream media is asking. Was the German fireball debris from 3I Atlas? Or was it a distraction? If you look at the orbital mechanics, the fireball's entry trajectory does not match 3I Atlas's path. The meteorite came in steep, nearly vertical, from the direction of the asteroid belt. 3I Atlas is approaching from the south, below the ecliptic plane, at a shallow angle. They are not aligned, but that does not mean they are unrelated. If 3I Atlas is what the data suggest it is, if it is a probe, if it has been maneuvering under intelligent control, then it has a problem. It is being watched, constantly, by dozens of observatories, by space agencies, by amateurs with telescopes and internet connections. Every trajectory correction it makes is recorded, analysed, published. It cannot move without being seen, unless it creates a distraction. If you wanted to make a course correction without being observed, you would not fire your thrusters during a quiet night when every telescope is pointed at you. You would wait for a moment when something else, something dramatic, demands attention. A fireball, a meteor shower, a satellite re-entry. Anything that pulls the cameras away for just a few hours, and if you had the capability, if you had been surveying the solar system for weeks, mapping trajectories, tracking debris fields, you would know exactly when and where natural events were going to occur. You would know when a random asteroid fragment was going to cross Earth's path and light up the sky over Europe, or you could make it happen yourself. I am not saying 3I Atlas dropped a rock on Germany. I am saying the timing is worth examining, and the fact that NASA delayed their trajectory data release by 36 hours, citing technical complications, is worth questioning. Because when that data finally came out, it contained something far more significant than a minor course correction. It contained a confession. NASA's original analysis was wrong. Let me explain what that means. Every object moving through space experiences forces. Gravity pulls you toward massive bodies like the Sun and planets. If you are a comet, you also experience non-gravitational forces. Gas venting from your surface pushes you in different directions. This is called outgassing, and it is completely natural. Every comet does it. When NASA first analysed 3I Atlas back in December 2025, they calculated the magnitude and direction of its non-gravitational acceleration. They published the results on the JPL Small Body Database, the official repository for asteroid and comet data. According to NASA's analysis, the object was experiencing a radial acceleration away from the Sun that was 5 times larger than the tangential acceleration along its direction of motion. That is exactly what you would expect from a comet. The Sun heats the surface, ice sublimates, gas expands outward away from the Sun. The comet gets a little push in the radial direction. Natural, predictable, case closed. But on March 3rd, a team of researchers led by Dr. Avi Loeb published a reanalysis of the same trajectory data. They used a more comprehensive orbital model, accounting for asymmetric outgassing, time offsets, and observational phase coverage. Their conclusion directly contradicts NASA's findings. The radial and tangential components of the non-gravitational acceleration are not different by a factor of 5. They are equal. The object is being pushed sideways just as much as it is being pushed away from the Sun. Why does that matter? Because natural outgassing does not push a comet sideways. When ice sublimates, it expands radially outward, perpendicular to the surface. If the surface is randomly rough, like every natural comet we have ever observed, the net force averages out to a radial push. You get thrust away from the Sun. You do not get significant tangential thrust unless the outgassing is highly directional, localized and asymmetric. And that is exactly what 3i Atlas is showing. Go back to the Hubble images I analysed in my January 9th investigation. 3 jets, spaced exactly 120 degrees apart, firing from high-latitude sources near the rotational pole, each jet modulated by a 7.1-hour rotational period. That is not random surface outgassing. That is directional thrust from specific localised sources. And if those jets are angled even slightly off the radial direction, if they are canted to one side by just a few degrees, they generate tangential thrust. They change the object's velocity along its orbit. They allow course corrections. That is not a comet. That is a reaction control system. Dr. Loeb himself raised this possibility in the conclusion of his paper. I'm quoting directly. The origin of the symmetric system of 3 mini-jets, separated equally by 120 degrees from each other, remains enigmatic. Does it constitute a technological signature of thrusters? We do not know. We do not know. But the math is now pointing in one direction. The object is not drifting, it is steering. And NASA knew this. They had the same data Loeb analysed. They have access to better computational models, more powerful orbital mechanics software, and teams of PhDs whose entire job is to calculate trajectories. They could have run the comprehensive analysis. They chose not to. Or they ran it, saw the results, and published the simpler version. Why? Because if you publish a report saying an interstellar object is experiencing equal radial and tangential non-gravitational acceleration, every scientist reading that report is going to ask the same question Loeb is asking. Is it a thruster? And if the answer might be yes, you have a problem. Because now it is not a comet, it is a probe. And if it is a probe, someone sent it. And if someone sent it, we need to know who and why, and what they learned while they were here. That is not a question NASA wants to answer in a press release, but it gets worse. Because according to a report published on March 9th by a Brazilian news outlet, NASA is not the only agency that has been tracking this object and staying quiet. US intelligence agencies have been involved since December. The report cites an unnamed source within the European scientific community, claiming that US intelligence, specifically the National Reconnaissance Office and elements within the Department of Defense, began tracking 3i Atlas in mid-December 2025, weeks before it was officially discovered by civilian astronomers on December 27th. The implication is clear. They saw it first. They knew it was coming. And when civilian telescopes picked it up and started publishing data, they said nothing. When the story broke, the NRO issued a one-sentence denial. The National Reconnaissance Office does not track or monitor cometary objects. End of statement. No elaboration. No press conference. No willingness to answer follow-up questions, but that denial does not hold up under scrutiny. The NRO operates a constellation of classified reconnaissance satellites. Their official mission is to provide imagery and signals intelligence for national security purposes. They watch the Earth, borders, military installations, missile launches, but their satellites do not only point down, they also look up. In 2014, NASA quietly announced a partnership with the NR to repurpose decommissioned spy satellites for space observation. The NRO donated 2 space telescopes to NASA, both with 2.4-meter mirrors, the same size as Hubble. These satellites were originally designed to image objects on Earth from orbit, but they work just as well pointed at deep space. If the NRO has telescopes capable of imaging objects in space, and if 3i Atlas is the most anomalous object to enter the inner solar system, in recorded history. Why would they not be watching it? And if they are watching it, why are they denying involvement? There is only one reason to deny tracking something, because admitting you are tracking it reveals what you know. And if what you know contradicts the public narrative, silence is safer than honesty. But the silence is not universal. Some scientists are speaking up, and they are not asking polite questions, they are demanding action. On March 7th, a consortium of researchers from MIT, Caltech, and the European Space Agency published a white paper titled Emergency Interceptor Mission to 3I Atlas, Scientific and Strategic Justification. The paper outlines a proposal to launch a small, fast spacecraft within the next 30 days to rendezvous with 3I Atlas, match its velocity, and conduct close-range observations before it exits the solar system. The mission profile is ambitious. Launch on a Falcon Heavy, gravity-assisted Earth, second burn at Mars. Intercept 3I Atlas somewhere past Jupiter's orbit in late 2027. Total mission time, 18 months. Cost, approximately $800 million. The justification is straightforward. 3I Atlas is the second interstellar object ever detected, and the first to exhibit unexplained geometric features and anomalous trajectory behavior. If there is even a small chance it represents technology, we have a scientific and strategic obligation to investigate before it leaves. The paper was uploaded to Archive on March 7th. Within 24 hours, it had been downloaded over 40,000 times. Within 48 hours, media outlets around the world were covering it. The headline was the same everywhere. Scientists want to chase the mysterious comet, but here is what none of the headlines mentioned. The launch window closed on March 4th. If you want to catch 3I Atlas, you need to launch while it is still close enough to reach with existing propulsion technology. Every day it moves farther away. Every day the fuel requirements increase. By the time the white paper was published, it was already too late. So why publish it? Because this proposal is not about catching 3I Atlas. It is about going on record. It is about creating a paper trail that says, we tried, we saw the anomalies, we wanted to investigate, and we were prevented. Prevented by what? Budget constraints, bureaucratic delays, or something else? The white paper includes a section titled Strategic Considerations. In that section, the authors argue that if 3I Atlas is technology, and if it successfully transmits data about Earth to an external receiver, humanity will have missed the only opportunity to intercept that transmission, study the object up close, and determine intent. They are not talking about science. They are talking about intelligence gathering. They are saying, if this is a probe, we need to know what it learned, where it is sending the data, and whether more are coming. And if the launch window is already closed, that means we are not going to know. We are going to watch it fly past Jupiter, do whatever it came here to do, and disappear into the dark. And we will never get another chance, unless it comes back. But let's focus on what we know is going to happen. 7 days from now, March 16th, 2026. 1400 UTC. 3I Atlas reaches closest approach to Jupiter's magnetosphere. Everything I explained in my last video still holds. The trajectory aligns perfectly with the Io Flux tube. The approach angle is exactly 8.8 degrees off the ecliptic, matching Jupiter's magnetic axis. The timing coincides with the optimal window for energy harvesting and data transmission via modulation of Jupiter's natural radio emissions. But now we have additional context. We know the object is maneuvering under active control. We know it made a final trajectory correction on March 8th, during the only 6-hour observation gap Europe has had in 3 months. We know NASA published incorrect data for 8 weeks, data that made the object look natural when the real numbers suggest otherwise. We know US intelligence has been tracking it since December and is denying involvement. And we know a group of credible scientists just went on record saying we should have launched an interceptor, and we did not. All of that points to one conclusion. Whatever 3i Atlas is about to do at Jupiter, it matters. And the agencies that are supposed to be transparent with the public are hiding what they know. So what should you be watching for on March 16th? First, monitor Jupiter's auroras. If 3i Atlas injects energy into the Io flux tube, the auroral zones at Jupiter's poles will brighten. Ground-based telescopes and the Hubble Space Telescope will be imaging Jupiter that day. If the flux tube lights up, the data will be public within hours. Second, watch for radio anomalies. Jupiter naturally emits powerful radio waves in the decametric range between 10 and 40 MHz. Amateur radio operators with the right equipment can detect these emissions from Earth. If 3i Atlas modulates those emissions to encode data, the signal pattern will change. It will show structure. It will show periodicity. It will not look random. Several online communities are already coordinating observation efforts. Radio astronomy forums, amateur satellite tracking groups, and independent researchers are planning to record Jupiter's radio output continuously from March 15th through March 17th. If something anomalous happens, someone will catch it. Third, watch the object itself. If 3i Atlas successfully harvests terawatts of power from the flux tube, it might change, it might brighten, it might activate systems that have been dormant, the jets might intensify, the electromagnetic signature might spike. NASA's Juno spacecraft will be in Jupiter's orbit during the encounter. If Juno detects anything unusual, the telemetry will eventually be released. Whether NASA explains it honestly is another question. But here is the part that should concern you the most. If 3i Atlas does transmit, if it uses Jupiter as an amplifier to send data across interstellar distances, we will not know what information it is sending. Go back to what this object has been doing for the last 3 months. It entered the inner solar system in late December. It passed within 0.12 astronomical units of Earth in mid-January, close enough to scan our atmosphere with spectrometers, map our electromagnetic emissions, and detect every radar pulse, satellite uplink, and radio broadcast we are transmitting into space. It knows we are here. It knows we are technological. It knows we have nuclear weapons, orbital infrastructure, and fragmented geopolitical systems. That data is valuable. That data is intelligence. And if it transmits that data to a receiver light years away, someone, somewhere, is going to learn that Earth is inhabited by a spacefaring species that is technologically advanced but not yet interstellar. That makes us visible. That makes us a target, or a curiosity, or a threat. We do not get to decide how that data is interpreted. We only get to watch it leave. But there is one more thing we should consider. If 3i Atlas is a probe, it is not alone. In my last video, I connected 3i Atlas to the dark flow anomaly, the observation that galaxy clusters across the universe are drifting in the same direction, as if something beyond the observable horizon is pulling them. I proposed that an advanced civilization capable of detecting that structure could use it as a navigational reference point, and that such a civilization would not send one probe to map the galaxy. They would send millions. If that hypothesis is correct, then 3i Atlas is just one node in a surveillance network that spans the Milky Way. There are others, waiting in the dark, watching for stars that emit the radio signatures of technological civilizations. And when a star system drifts into range, the probe wakes up, intercepts, surveys, and reports. We drifted into range. 3i Atlas intercepted, it surveyed, and in 7 days it reports. And then it leaves, and we are left with the knowledge that we were seen. So here is where we stand. 7 days until the Jupiter encounter. 7 days until we see if this object does what every piece of evidence suggests it came here to do. For this to be a natural comet, you now have to accept 7 coincidences. 1. The 3 jets naturally aligned at perfect 120-degree intervals. 2. the jets naturally generated equal radial and tangential acceleration, mimicking a reaction control system. 3. An internal heat source is naturally keeping the jets active 420 million kilometers from the Sun in the freezing dark at negative 150 degrees Celsius. 4. A cosmic ray naturally blinded JUICE's spectrometer at the exact moment it scanned the object. 5. The trajectory naturally shifted to exactly 8.8 degrees off the ecliptic, perfectly aligning with Jupiter's magnetic axis. 6. A fireball naturally hit Germany on the exact day NASA was scheduled to release updated trajectory data, creating a 6-hour observation gap during which the object made a final course correction. 7. US intelligence agencies naturally started tracking it weeks before civilian discovery and naturally decided to deny involvement when asked. 7 coincidences, or one assumption. It is a machine, it was sent here, it surveyed Earth, and in 7 days it uploads. Which explanation requires less faith? On March 16th, I will be here, on this channel, breaking down the data in real time. I will be monitoring Juno telemetry. I will be tracking radio observatories. I will be watching Jupiter's auroras. And I will be analysing every piece of evidence that comes in. If the flux tube brightens, you will see it here first. If Jupiter's radio emissions spike, you will see the analysis here first. If NASA goes silent, you will hear about it here first. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure notifications are turned on, because the mainstream media is not going to cover this honestly. They are going to call it a solar storm. They are going to call it instrument error. They are going to tell you it was just a comet, and you should stop asking questions. But we are going to keep asking, and we are going to keep watching. I want to hear from you in the comments. Natural coincidences or deliberate mission? Do you think the German fireball was a distraction, or am I connecting dots that are not there? What do you think happens on March 16th? Drop your answer below. I read every single comment. And if you want to understand the full picture, if you want to see how 3i Atlas fits into the larger mystery of what might be watching us from the dark, go watch my previous investigation. The link is on your screen. That video explains the Jupiter transmission theory, the Io flux tube mechanics, and why this object's trajectory is not random. We are 7 days from the biggest astronomical event of the decade, maybe the century. Stay with me, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep watching the sky.